This conference will now be recorded.
Are we good over there? All right. Good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, December 7th at 9:31 a.m. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order and then open the floor for any opportunity for public comment. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to address the TAC? Are there any comments online? All right. Seeing none, we'll move to agenda item 3, which is the staff update. In your packet and on the screen here in a second, you'll see the upcoming meetings for TAC and Policy Board, BPAC, and the Freight Advisory Committee. Most of these meetings are going to be held at 9:30 in this room on the date listed. 2 of those have different times. One is at 2 p.m. That's the BPAC committee on December 14th, and then on January 24th, the Freight Advisory Committee will be meeting at 2:30 p.m. Other updates: the Bell County Thoroughfare Plan. Staff are still working on that project. All right, we do have a public forum scheduled for December 12th at the county courthouse, Bell County Courthouse, at 5 p.m. at in the judges conference room downstairs on the first floor. If anybody would like to attend, we'll also be sending information about that out via our social media platform. The TxDOT FY23 statewide transportation alternatives call for projects opened on December 2nd. This is funding for bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure projects. All the communities are eligible. If you are interested, need assistance with applying for these, please reach out to staff. We're more than happy to help. And I believe that's it for staff updates. Do you have any?
I have one more. The FY23 to 26 TIP was officially approved by UPWP on November 18th, and the instance for revising it is open now. I know we're in the middle of our public involvement still, but confirm with TxDOT that we can go ahead and submit it once Policy Board approves everything next week. We'll just add that as our back documentation.
And then lastly would be the air quality readings, which were 54 and 51 parts per billion. As you'll see, it's quite a drop. We typically see that drop in November, December timeframe. So we anticipate that it will start going back up in February, March. Any questions on the staff update? All right. Seeing none, we will move to agenda item 4, which is an action item regarding approval of the minutes from the November 2nd, 2022 meeting. This is pages 10 through 12 in your packet. The action required would be to approve the minutes. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes as they've been presented? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second. Motion and a second. Further questions, comments, concerns, or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Moving right along. Agenda item 5 is a discussion and action item regarding the recommending of approval of amendments to the FY23-26 Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP, and the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan, the MTP, for projects. The projects listed on the screen and in your packet. These projects are C4502, the Business US 190 turnaround, T35-36A, Veterans Memorial Boulevard Phase 2, T40-07A, Temple Outer Loop West Phase 1, T45-18, SH95 turn lanes, and W35-01 Copperas Cove US 190 bypass. And I will transfer this over to James so he can give an update on this.
Yeah, so we had a public meeting on December 1st, last Thursday at the public library, and our 15-day public comment period closed on Saturday, December 3rd. We didn't receive any comments regarding projects during the public comment period or at the public meeting. I I know you ran through these and we talked about them last meeting, so I'll just do a quick summary. But we're adding 3 projects to the TIP. That's the Business US 190 turnaround, Veterans Memorial Boulevard Phase 2, and the S695 turn lanes. And then the Temple Outer Loop West Phase 1, the construction cost is increasing by $5 million, and that's category 10 funding from the earmarks, congressional earmarks. And then W3501, the Copperas Cove bypass, we're reallocating $36.95 million from Cap 2 to Cap 4. So I'll just highlight the funding amount. Almost $2 million for Business US 190 turnaround, $10 million for Veterans Memorial Boulevard Phase 2. And that's split between earmark funding and local funding. Outer Loop West funding, which is the previous amount, that was category 7, and the new funding of $5 million, category 10 earmark. The turn lanes, $1.2 million. Actually, I think that's wrong. I think it should be 1.4. It should be 1.4.
Yeah, it's like 1.3 or 1,340,000.
Yeah. The Copperas Cove bypass may have had the old funding amount too. And then the Copperas Cove bypass, the total amount is not changing. It's just reallocated numbers there. 23.5 million of category 2 and 37 million of here's an updated schedule. There are no issues with this, and we will present to the policy board next week for final approval. As I mentioned, these projects we are submitting them to TxDOT. The deadline is this week, just to have those submitted. Once policy board approves next week, we'll add the confirmation of public involvement documentation. So, unless there are any questions.
Questions, comments, concerns, further discussion? Seeing none, this is an action item to recommend approval of the amendments. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A motion. Second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, that motion carries. Agenda item 6 is a discussion and action item regarding the FY 2022 to 2023 Unified Planning Work Program, or the UPWP Amendment Number 3, designating and funding FY 23 special studies. This is pages 26 through 28 in your packet, and there'll be additional information on the slideshow. James.
Yes, our UPWP is the internal budgetary document, and we are proposing some changes to fund special studies. We brought this up at the last one of the 2 meetings. So what we didn't receive any strong feedback from the TAC policy board. So what staff is proposing is to revise some of the previous subtasks, and you can see subtask 5.3, 5.4, and 5.9 that were old studies that were funded, but no one responded to them. We don't have any staff at the time. We don't need to use those dollars anymore, so reallocating them and then shifting funds between several task 5 subtasks. And then moving subtask 5.11 to 5.15 or 1.4. Some small budget tables here, and the overall cost isn't, overall dollar amounts are not changing, and what it boils down to is the subtask 5.3, which is now the resiliency implementation plan. We're putting $50,000 on that. Subtask 5.4, which is the housing coordination plan, also $50,000. And then the MPO boundary expansion study, which is now subtask 5.9, $20,000. We're also moving some funds in subtask 5.6, which is the public involvement study, because that's another one we're probably going to go out for, and increased it by $5,000, and that came from an excess in from the bike share feasibility study, some unused funding for that. And then the last change is the MPO dashboard, and the total funding amount's not changing. We're just moving unused dollars to FY23 so we can cover expenses incurred during this new fiscal year. That second table is the overall amounts. It's a transfer of almost $200,000, a little bit less than $200,000 from FY22 to FY23.
So there's no overall budgetary change, it's just the tasks. And then in addition to what James has said, for this approval, we'll need a recommendation of approval. If there are any concerns with the special studies that we provided in here, if you have any other thoughts on special studies that may be beneficial to the region, we can surely discuss those and maybe replace or move some funds around while we look at this document prior to bringing it to policy board. The housing coordination plan, that's one that came out with the new IIJA. It's not a requirement, but it's something that we can do. If we have the money to do it, we might as well. That's kind of that thought process, because in the future it may actually be something they mandate. Who knows? The resiliency implementation plan, that was something that was brought up in the FCR. So we'd like to get that taken care of. And then the striking of subtasks 5.11 through 5.15, just a special study that clears up some of the UPWP concern that was also listed on the federal certification review of having placeholders in our UPWP. Then, like James said, we're really just moving funds from 22 to 23 to no overall budget change, except for the specific tasks that dollars are going to.
Ryan, could you speak a little bit more to the boundary expansion project?
That's something we've had. I'll let James speak a little bit more to it. It was done, we did one in 2012 following the last census. So we thought it may be something good to keep on our radar as the new census numbers come out. They're supposed to be the new urbanized area designations are supposed to come out this month. So that may be something that impacts us. So our job is to put that in there, not as a placeholder, as an actual study, but to see how the impact is and if there's any benefit to us possibly expanding our boundaries as provided by federal guidance, what we can and can't do.
So question on that, because I was here with the last one, we did all the smoothing of the UGAs and all that. What I don't remember, ultimately, who approves it? If we expand, like dramatically, significantly expand the boundary, not just smoothing the line, who approves that? Is that Transportation Commission? Is it WA?
It's the governor's office.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Those expansions all have to do with the governor. The governor designates the UPO area.
Okay. Thank you.
So it doesn't go to the Transportation Commission?
I'm not sure if it goes to the commission for recommendation. I wasn't here.
So I was, but I don't recall.
From my understanding, it goes from us to the governor's office. That method, I'm not sure of yet. Any other questions on this agenda item? Discussion, thoughts on the special studies? Anything you'd like to see changed? All right. Yes.
I don't remember which one meeting it was in. Might have been both. But I brought up about, potentially studying alternative fuels. I was recommending to change the wording to alternative fuels along the kind of I about the corridor. Is that something that we still want to consider, not consider?
So I think what we keep that on our list. James and I were in a meeting yesterday with the Texas Technology Task Force. And they did a lot of discussion and had some maps for alternative fuels, and they're going through some of that process right now. So I hate to duplicate our efforts.
I'm fine with that. I still think of geographically in that.
And just so you know, I mean, this is going on cars. It's alternative fuels. Hydrogen was a big conversation yesterday during that call. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to recommend approval. Or not.
Make a motion to recommend the adjustments to the U5 planning work program.
A motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Any other further questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? That motion carries. Agenda item 7, this is just a discussion item. This gets brought to you every year. This is regarding KTMPO's FY 2023 PM1 safety targets, pages 30 through 34 in the packet. I'll let James speak to this. Go ahead, James.
Yeah, so the PM1 safety target, this is again came from the FACTS Act. It's one of the 5, maybe 6 now federally required performance measures that states and MPOs must track and adopt. So this one involves safety. There's 5 targets that PennDOT sets, and it's all in the transportation legislation that was passed in 2015. But training for the number of fatalities per million miles traveled, BMT, number of serious injuries per million vehicle miles traveled, and then the number of non-motorized fatalities and non-motorized serious injuries. TxDOT has released set their targets for FY23, and MPOs are required to adopt them by February 27. These are the targets that TxDOT released, statewide numbers, and there's the 2023, and then the targets are actually those very bottom numbers down there, expressed as a 5-year average. So 3,682 for the total number of fatalities, 17,000 and change for the serious injuries, 1.83 for fatalities per 100 million PT, 6.39 for the serious injuries per vehicle miles traveled, and 2,357 for the non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. Staff were talking. I know we have that data dashboard now with the local information, but due to the short time frame, we don't feel like we have enough time to adequately analyze and set targets for a local region. So our recommendation is to adopt TxDOT, the statewide targets for 1 more year. And then by next winter, when we have to set targets again, we should have the analysis ready to set targets for our local region. So I think this is just for discussion. So if there's any comments, questions, we'll be bringing this back as a resolution next month in here. I'm done.
Just the standing, why we're shooting so high, we need to be shooting low, so far, we need to shoot high.
And I think that's why, right now we're recommending to go with the states because we don't have the data available or, time to get everything crammed in February. This is not something we want to rush. We want to come up with, well thought of targets. And I think that the dashboard we had created will help us achieve that. But like I said, I just don't think we have the time. That's why it's to go with these. But we had this conversation, I think.
Sorry.
When we set standards, I think it's good to be, data driven, but there's some things you got to go beyond the data. some, maybe some higher, marginally audacious goals, protect lives as they're driving around and walking around the system. So I hope that we give some greater weight to consciously driving down the numbers. And I know that is the plan. I know the tech does that. Our local communities do it, and the NPO does it as well. We have to, like for instance, the numbers, if they're higher than what last year was, then that's awfully low hanging fruit. As you know, when the fruits are hanging low, then your expectations are not really driving change. And, many people get killed and injured and maimed and everything in the process. We have to be conscious about making this much safer. And I think for our own NPO, I think it's very acceptable to take a stand on it.
Oh, there we go.
And those are just my standard stuff, speech on something around the area. There's just so many people who get affected, not only the dead and injured, but everybody associated with people. So it's kind of that roll off emotional and psychological traffic. Thank you for that question.
So I think two things. You said, not necessarily the data is not available. We looked at it before. The data is not there to make a prediction. In terms of, if you can go back a slide that had the number of fatalities, it's like 3,000 fatalities statewide, state of 29 million. But statistically, if you've got above 1,000 data points, you can start to draw some conclusion. And I was trying to look up, and I can't find the numbers right at hand on my phone. Temple had 63 fatalities from 2016 to 2020. But in that 5 years, it was 8 one year, 18 the next year, 9 the following year, 14. The data's noisy. It becomes difficult mathematically to draw a curve and say we're going up, we're going down. And then predict, say, okay, well, if we're going up 3% every year, then our goal is let's slow that increase. Let's limit it to a 1% increase. Let's make it a decrease, which is an even better goal. Regionally, when we've looked at in the past, there's just not enough data points, especially with the fatalities. Serious accident, minor accidents, yeah. So we may not have the data to do the statistical analysis. It's that, okay, well, our goal is to have 12 fatalities. We may get it next year, and then the following year, we saw weird things happen during the pandemic. The fatalities skyrocketed, but overall crashes decreased because there just wasn't as many people on the road too. But there were some many odd things happened in 2020. We know that. So by adopting the state's targets, not necessarily saying that we're ignoring crash, we're ignoring the fatalities. You can still look at clusters. You can still look at intersections with a trend of fill in the blank, failure to yield, failure to stop, speeding, drunk driving, distracted driving. And we got that data. You can use the CRIS data, there's databases, the dashboard will show those clusters. So goal setting aside, we can still look at the clusters. We can still see the trends where a project, where some mitigation is needed, more light, better signal, fill the blank. And I think one thing we've done in the past, maybe this is something we need to make sure we work with this resolution. TxDOT has been pushing the end of the street plan, and y'all have climbed on board with that again recently. Let's make sure we put that up front in the resolution. Our goal is zero fatalities. Our goal is as few crashes as possible. Reduce the number of property, life, safety, all of it. That's our ultimate intent. The numbers are the numbers. But no fatalities. If we have that language in the resolution, I think we keep our head in the game of why we're doing this. That we're still working towards that safer community.
Interestingly enough, it's not an engineering issue. Well, not only an engineering issue.
Right.
It's a social, psychological, emotional.
Phone down the drive.
Don't get that, don't be mad when you get whatever, get enough sleep.
Yeah, it's multi-pronged.
There's 1,000 reasons why people get mad. Or they kill somebody.
Brian, related to this, as far as performance measures, we always do TAM, Transit Asset Management Plan, which includes the state of the good repair. So that's virtually almost finished. We usually send that over to you guys in January. Last I was told, we were waiting on just a couple more numbers from rural county, and that'll be stuff. And then also the PTAS, the Public Transit Agency Safety Plans. That's an ongoing thing. We meet monthly on that and have a database that collects all that data. So that's it. That's it.
It's ready. The PTAS.
The PTAS. Yeah, we actually, our board voted a minor amendment due to some change in personnel. It was months ago, 6 weeks ago, I don't remember, one of our last ones. And
Town Plaza, you're having fun there.
so we've got just a few minor changes, but those really would be better to just take that to the board in midsummer. So again, personnel changing software.
We can have those agendas, resolutions for those in the agendas.
Any other comments on this? This is just a discussion item that'll be brought back, a resolution next month. Like I said, staff are recommending we follow the states this year, and then we'll get into a possible working group to discuss in the next action item or the next discussion item. Anything else on this? Safety targets? All right. Seeing none, we will move to agenda item 8, which is a discussion item regarding upcoming KTMPO working groups. This is page 36. We just discussed safety working group possibly for the upcoming year for performance safety measures. These are just 2 work groups that the KTMPO, when leadership changed, the chair and vice chair, I met with both. We discussed possibly having some ad hoc committees or working groups. These are 2 that have come to mind. If you're interested in serving on either the safety working group or a possible project scoring process work group, please let us know. Our thought is to kind of get these down to a couple people from TAC, a couple people from policy board maybe, to sit in a room, kind of hash some things out, and we can present everything and get full support from the TAC and policy board moving forward. That way, like the project scoring process, many people are aware that can be a time-consuming process when you start developing that scoring. So any thoughts on working groups? If you think it's a bad idea, just let me know. But if you're interested in possibly participating in a working group, please send that information to staff. That way we can share it with the policy board when they actually, should they decide to set a working group up for either of these items. Any questions, comments, recommendations? All right.
Jason, you may end up being a working group of 1.
We'll volunteer Bob.
Which one? I'll do the safety.
All right. Seeing nothing else on agenda item 8, which is with the working groups, we'll move to agenda item 9. This is a discussion item regarding public input received through November 2022, and I will let James, like he usually does, tackle this one.
Yeah, so as we've entered a new fiscal year, we've removed we have the old comments, so we're not going to show them every. We did receive a Facebook comment on a post about the hop. Someone noticed that someone wants us to look at eliminate unprofitable routes.
What was the comment? Eliminating.
Eliminate unprofitable routes. They said that they've never seen us more than a couple people.
Yeah. It depends on the bus, it depends on the route, it depends on the time of day. But our goal on the fixed route bus is an average of 10 passengers per service hour. On STS buses, it's 2 passengers per service hour, average out over a 12-hour. So there are times a day where there's only a couple people on there, and there's times a day where shop a couple of people. We did experience, like every transit agency in the country, a hit on ridership during the pandemic. We dropped average of right at negative 36%. So we lost about 36% over a 2-year period. That was the average. The highest loss that we experienced was early on in the pandemic. It was around 54%. And those are, I think I said it before, those are tough numbers that, believe it or not, considerably better than the national average. There were, especially in large cities, we're seeing 90% drop at times. And even now, we're still at 34, 35%, negative 35%. And again, it is, that's a lesser number than what you see nationwide. I think that number is still floating 50-some%. We are, just as a data point, we are looking at making some changes to try to bring those numbers back. And those changes really involve microtransit. Some stuff that Temple was looking at. In fact, we looked at it about 3 years ago or so. We were calling it suburban service, but the same type of concept, where we shift a lot of our fixed route ridership to an on-demand model. And so we're looking at that coming up this next year, probably throwing a dart at the wall, so don't hold to it, but probably midsummer, like maybe July 1 kind of time frame. We're hoping to kick some of that stuff off. We've actually started it and one route over in Killeen as a pilot program. And so anyway, there's some changes along those lines that are coming. We'll share more detail about that. We want to do a workshop with the board. That's in January sometime. Another board meeting. And we'll be able to do a lot of that.
Thanks for responding. It's not on here, but earlier this week, someone in our office came and talked to me, and they were driving down the other line and Chaparral. Concerned that at that intersection, I don't think we're not aware about Chaparral, but just expecting concern about how there are floods and the lack of a traffic light down Chaparral. So since that is relevant, I wanted to make a mention of it, but it's not on here. We can have it for the policy.
Yeah, pick up the silent project. Moving forward.
That's why I tell people when I get comments, I'm like, it's coming, it's gonna take a while, but it's
comments on the comments? Seeing none, we'll go to agenda item 10, which is member comments. Are there any members that have comments for the board?
I didn't want to get too far off topic with what Daryl was talking about, but I do want to briefly kind of let y'all know the background, and you may already know this, and so I'll apologize if I'm being but about 4 years ago, Judge Blackburn was instrumental in kind of guiding and directing Hill Country Transit to maybe update the business model. We did a transportation study, and there were some really good things that came out of that study. And part of it was the implementation plan. And so in doing that, we interviewed, we sent out the RFPs for prospective interim transportation managers for Hill Country Transit. And we ended up selecting Hendrick Transportation. And they've been on board for about a year.
It came on January.
January, okay. So we're close to a year. And with that, the direction we were initially going kind of had to change a few things. But Hendrick is tasked with implementing some the strategies that were developed in that transportation study. So when Daryl talks about the micro transit piece of things, it is to try to find a more responsive as well as more efficient way of managing mass transportation. You know, kind of the correlation is if you look at like Uber, that has made a dynamic shift in transportation. And so some of the concepts of a micro transportation in this piece is to be competitive with Uber, to allow some of those same people that might utilize Uber, utilize a transportation system. And so with that, I know that Hill Country gives some updates periodically, but it might be worthwhile. Daryl, I'm not trying to attach more. It might be worthwhile as we're coming to the first year of this interim management to have them put together a little bit of something to kind of say, this is where we started, this is where we're what we're trying to achieve, and kind of flow of that. I think it'd be good, for the TAC as well as policy board to hear that. When you see some of these comments, I'm asking that you understand that some of those items are already being addressed or are attempting to be addressed. Sorry about
No, I think that's valid, very, very valid. And that comment is correct. We are not meeting the 10 passenger per service hour goal that we had. By the way, that goal that's kind of a national average that we try to target, that most systems try to target. On fixed route, we went from around 12-ish down to 7 or 8. I think we're now around 8 passengers per service hour. On the fixed route, on the demand side, we dropped down to 7. Now we're back up to about. But with Miller is correct. We're very excited about the changes that we're proposing and we're bringing on. Henderson Transportation Group, I think several of you have met Raymond Torres, doing a great job. He's got a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge, and he's bringing a lot of good ideas. We're hopeful that when we make these changes, we will see an uptick. There's 3 big pillars in public transportation. The operating hours, the hours that we operate, which is roughly about 12 hours a day. Operating area, that's usually driven by fixed routes. And microtransit planning, that would change a little bit. And then frequency. Now we've got a 1-hour frequency buses make a 1 hour move to fixed routes too. So I think the direction we're going, we will probably increase the operating area hours and all three, which is, that's monumental if we can pull that off. And I'm pretty confident.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other member comments? Seeing none, we will move to agenda item 11, and the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.